The Mario movie is amazing, at least the images. Today, we will be looking at my favorite film, Peaches. No, but seriously, we will be talking about the new Mario movie and specifically why it looks so beautiful. I'm going to break down some stills and explain why each image works so well. So this film was directed by these beautiful gentlemen. I don't know how to pronounce their names, so I'll just put them up on screen. And I'm sure they had some help from a few people. So the first image we will be looking at is from an earlier scene in the movie. Okay, so here is one of the first shots from the movie. Here we have Mario and Luigi. We're first going to look at the waveform in grayscale. Now you can see here we have a backlighting, and it also looks like they have a little bit of a fill light coming in from over here. There's also a lot of contrast in their clothing. Their hands, white, dark, mainly from the game. But you also have a pop from the background. Here you have a darkness here. And then here you have the light on his face. Then you have dark right here. That's a little lighter. This kind of gets lost in here. But for the most part, they're separated from the background. And we also have this cool bokeh, which I'll talk a little bit about later. Now I'll put back the saturation. Now let's look at the color palette. I'm going to drag and drop that on. Now you can see, here's the color palette. We have the highlight color palette. It's more desaturated and it's also muted. You can see there's a few blues, a few oranges. It's kind of like an orange and teal. And that's pretty much what the highlights are right now. But in the middle, you can also see a little orange, teal, red. Then you have red, green, and blue, and yellow. Now, if we go to our vector scope, we can see the reds, greens, blues, and yellows. These are kind of like primary colors. Red, yellow, blue, primaries. And then we also have green, which is another really vivid color. I'm pretty sure this is like a quadratic type color scheme, a 4 type color scheme that they're using here. And it separates from the background because the background is kind of like a teal and orange. It has a few other colors in it, but it really helps them stand out from the rest of the world. You can see the composition. It's them in center frame. They're kind of on a third. Luigi's more on a third. Mario's still on a third this way. Let's move on to the next one. Now here we have Mario and Princess Peach. This is a lot more vibrant, a lot more colorful, and it introduces us to the world of Mario. Now here we can see, if we look around at the colors, we got pink, we got yellow, blue, red, green. The only thing you really don't see is magenta, but there's some pink and magenta in her dress. But it's mainly yellow, red, blue, green, and pink as like a highlight color for her dress. You can see it's not like a regular orange and teal look that Hollywood uses most often. Now, if we look at the composition, they're placed in center frame. This draws our eyes, leading lines to these two. And yeah, it's pretty basic. Here, I will go to the next one. Now here is an establishing shot. This is pretty interesting because you can see there's a lot of reds right here. There's red and there's this teal color. It's more of like a greenish sea green teal, but these are actually contrasting colors. So the red, the teal, yellow as a highlight color, blue, yellows and blues also are contrast colors. So orange and blue too. So it's a lot of contrast colors, but they work really well together. If you look down at the vector scope, you can see the red and the cyanish green are contrasting, and the orange and blue, or cyan, are also contrasting. It's 2 different contrasting colors, but they work really well together. And if we turn down the saturation, we got a big highlight there leading our eyes. They are in silhouette, so as they're coming toward each other, they're the darkest part of the frame. And we're paying attention to that because this is all light back here, drawing our eyes into here, which is a little harder than drawing your eyes to light, but this still works. I'm going to pull up the color palette again. And here we see the tans, the blues, so orange and teal type. Then once we get into the midtones, it's more red and earthy tones. Then once we get into the shadows, greens, like kind of like you see here, there's a green in the shadow here. Most of the green is in the shadow. In the highlights, it's more tan. The reds are kind of in the middle. The blues are also kind of in the middle, but they're more in the highlight area. But yeah, it really helps cement that image. Let's move on to the next shot. This one is really, really cool. I really love this shot. This is like, you know, the Ice Kingdom. But the whole image, I'll pull up the color palette. I'll put the color palette first because you can see this is all analogous colors. We only have one color. Here on the vector scope, you can see it's all one color. It gets more desaturated towards the top. It's kind of light blues. Then here we get to regular blues. And then there we get dark blues. The shadows are raised, so it kind of creates a soft image. I'm going to pull up some Photo P right now. Here I've opened Photoshop, Photo P, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to select some of these highlights. And I'm going to make my brush larger so you can see that that's what the highlights look like. I'm going to select a few midtones. We also have these greens back here, which are really cool. So we have a little bit of green, but for the most part, it's living all in this blue area. And even in the shadows, they're raised. They're a darker blue, but it still looks amazing. Like, it's just a beautiful image. And you can see, I said I would talk about the lenses later. Here you can see some of that anamorphic, like, lens distortion. And you can see, if you zoom in here, you have like these rainbow edges, like the reds and the blues. And basically they used a digital lens, an anamorphic digital lens, to recreate the anamorphic look in animation. And I'll show you a really good example in this up next. Here you can see the anamorphic, right? You have that bokeh that kind of is oval shaped and is kind of painterly, and it looks so beautiful. And here, this is just your classic teal and orange. It's more of like a purple dark blue. If you look here, it's more of a blue and yellow, and then some red, which highlights peach. And if we take the color palette to this, you can see pretty much what I said. Blue, dark blue, teal, and in the middle we have the reds. But it's not always that simple. And look at this, the stars in the background, you can also see very faintly, but they still have that oval bokeh. Then peach right here, she's the lightest part of the image. Of course she's on fire here, which is not that great, but it's amazing. The image is just beautiful. And if we go back to our last image, I forgot to mention this, but symmetry. These are symmetrical. And then this right here, the middle image, is asymmetrical. Because if it was perfect, it would look a little bit weird. But for the most part, this is symmetrical, that's symmetrical, that's symmetrical. And then in the very middle, we have a little bit of asymmetry. This is also the brightest part of the image. And we also have a vignette to lead our eyes in, and then there's leading lines, and that's a little bit on the composition. Now I'll move on to the most beautiful scene ever, and this is Bowser singing to Peach. Now, why I say this is super beautiful is because, of course, you have cool tones, you have the purples, you have the blues, and it's so contrasty. Like, if you turn down this, you can see Bowser is the brightest part of the image, and he's being lit up just a little bit, and the rest of it's dark, and there's like a dark vignette around him, and it's perfect. And this is all silhouette. The background's lighter there. It's a lot of contrast, and even with the colors, it's contrasting. You have blue on this side, and then a little bit of pink, and then blue here. And Bowser is the pinkest thing in the image. Everything else is kind of blue. There's dark purple and pink here, but Bowser is like the highlight here. And if we zoom in, if I can zoom in, you can see on the edges of the frame, this is more of that lens, you can see there's a little bit of a swirl. Now, this anamorphic lens, I guess they wanted a swirl in the image because the bokeh kind of swirls around and it's very dreamy. And it's just so beautiful. It's amazing. This isn't the last image, but it's close. This image right here, where they're going through the portals, the colors are just amazing. These are more warm colors. It's kind of like the opposite of Bowser right here. These are super warm colors. They're vibrant. You got the reds, you got the yellows. And if you can see here, when we put the color palette on, you can see the highlights are different from a lot of the other images because it's not that teal and orange. It's actually yellow and pink. And it looks so beautiful and so good. And there is a few orange and teals in here, but it's very minor. There's some green contrasted with the pink, but for the most part, it's this pink, purple, and yellow. Purple is a cooler color, but the pink and the yellow are warmer, so that really contrasts well. And if we turn this down again, you can see the brightest part of the image. Your eyes led to there first. Brightest part of the image. Then there's leading lines with these roads. Beautiful. And also, this is another thing, texture. The texture in this image is amazing. Like with the clouds, bubbly. It gives it more life. But here is the final image, the hero shot. This is my favorite image in the movie, and it's because you can tell the focal length of this is long. It's not a wide focal length. And what this does is it compresses it so it makes this feel so large and so big and so close, but you can still see in the distance it fades off. And then you have the huge sun, which is also made bigger by that focal length. And it's just so vibrant, and it's also very peaceful. The Mario movie is just amazing at what it does. It makes the most beautiful images, not in animation, but in a lot of like live action. They would just desaturate it and it looks so bad, and then they would like add a contrast curve like that, desaturate it more, maybe make it more blue. And they wouldn't even have pink. This would be green. Like, this is what it would look like if DC were to make it. Or maybe Marvel. Marvel would probably have a little bit more color, but that's what it would look like if Marvel did it. But instead we get this. But that's okay. Anyway, I hope you have a good day and keep color grading.